Okay, so just before I begin, a couple of words about what my speech is going to be on. It will be marking the International Day against homophobia, biphobia and transphobia. I'll mention the organisation LGBT Youth Scotland and something called Section 28. But other than that, it should all be relatively straightforward. So now you've had a bit of an introduction, I will begin. Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I can hear an interpreter. That's fine now. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, allow me to say what an honour it is to be here today representing LGBT Youth Scotland. I have to say it is absolutely wonderful to be able to travel again, and I really hope to be able to explore some of Brussels and Belgium before I head home to Edinburgh. I will certainly be sticking around to go to Pride on Saturday, and I really hope to see some of your faces there. Before I begin, I would like to thank the organisers of this conference and, of course, our fantastic interpreters who are doing a fantastic job. So thank you to all of them. I'd also like to offer congratulations to the previous speakers for their informative and very inspiring speeches. Obviously, we are gathered here today to mark the International Day against homophobia, biphobia and transphobia, which, as you know, took place yesterday on the 17th of May. I'm here today to talk about LGBTQIA+ rights in my home country, which, as you can probably tell from my accent, is Scotland. I am proud to say that Scotland has the reputation for being one of the most LGBT-friendly countries in Europe and, dare I say, the world. In fact, just a few years ago, the then Scottish Labour leader described the Scottish Parliament as the Rainbow Parliament and the gayest parliament in the world, with 4 out of the 6 leaders of Scottish political parties identifying as gay or bisexual. We have many Pride events throughout the years. We have parades, we have queer film festivals, queer bookshops, and even queer cafes. We have also produced LGBT trailblazers, such as singer Jimmy Somerville, actor Alan Cumming, and renowned crime writer Val McDermid. That being said, is it perhaps a little dangerous to just rest on our laurels and assume that we don't have to do any more? Because I don't think it's true to say that we have actually reached true equality in Scotland, although we have made good headway, it has to be said. But today I would like to take you on a whirlwind tour of Scottish LGBT history from the 1980s until today. And you will soon see that Scotland hasn't always been so welcoming of LGBT identities. And indeed, in some cases, it still isn't. First things first, it's important to mention that being gay, or rather relationships and sex between 2 men, was decriminalised in 1981. Rather shamefully, this was over a decade after England and Wales decriminalised being gay. But of course, the story doesn't end here. The age of consent wasn't brought in line with that for heterosexual couples until the year 2000, which is also when Section 28 was repealed in Scotland. Section 28. Now, that's where I want to begin today. I could go much further back in time, but due to time constraints, I'm going to begin here. Section 28 is something that still sends chill down the spines of LGBT people in Scotland and the rest of the UK. And it did a huge amount of harm to our community that is still felt today. In the 1980s, the LGBT community was still reeling from the AIDS crisis. Homophobia was on the rise, and so the LGBT community organised protests to fight for more equality and recognition. In retaliation, Margaret Thatcher's Tory government instead decided to introduce Section 28. Essentially, Section 28 was a clause prohibiting the promotion of LGBT values. It was put in place to defend traditional family values and to protect children. So what did this mean in practice? It meant that local communities were not allowed to offer support to LGBT people. It meant that teachers at schools could not mention same-sex couples or offer counselling to queer children. And in general, wreaked havoc. It led to increased homophobic attacks and attitudes, and was a very difficult time for queer and trans people. Scrapping Section 28 was one of the first laws passed when the Scottish Parliament first reopened its doors in the year 2000. It was the first time that the Parliament had sat since the Act of Union was passed, which was an economic union that brought Scotland and England together, creating what is now the United Kingdom. Later, in 2005, civil unions for same-sex couples was legalised. In 2007, same-sex couples were given equal adoption rights. And finally, in 2014, marriage for same-sex couples was legalised. Nowadays, same-sex couples have the right to put both of their names on their child's birth certificates as well. In 2018, it was a momentous occasion when our First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, publicly apologised in Parliament for the wrongs that had befallen gay men when homosexuality was deemed a medical condition and illegal. In terms of trans rights, in Scotland, trans people have the right to self-identify. And in fact, since 2007, the Scottish Government has been funding the Scottish Trans Alliance, which is in fact the first project of its kind to be funded by a national government in Europe. At the moment, there are consultations taking place to try and reform gender recognition to make it easier for trans people to self-identify. I'm sure you will agree that this is all extremely positive and good steps forward. But we're a long way from reaching true equality. You may have seen in the news that the UK government came under fire recently for refusing to criminalise conversion therapy for trans people, while criminalising it for gay and bisexual people. This comes at a time when transphobia is on the rise, fueled by media outlets and public transphobic figures such as Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling. I'm also saddened and disappointed to say that a survey in Scotland has found that over half of trans people face routine discrimination at work and in public places. And this same survey has found that the LGBT community in Scotland is not as happy now as it was 5 years ago. And this shows that we cannot be complacent, and we cannot just assume that our rights are protected. Demonstratively, It is still illegal to be gay in over 70 countries around the world. Even here in Europe, Poland has introduced LGBT-free zones, and Hungary has banned the promotion of homosexuality and transgenderism. Personally, I have always been lucky enough to feel safe when I walk along the road holding my partner's hand, but I recognise that not everybody in the community feels this way. And we cannot stop fighting until the whole community throughout the world feels safe enough to be who they are and to love who they love. This is why events such as Pride remain crucial, even in 2022, and why we need to mark events such as the International Day against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia. So I noticed that I am quickly running out of time, and so I will wrap up here. Thank you all very much for your attention. And I must say, I'm very much looking forward to hearing from my colleague from England, who's going to be talking about LGBT representation in the media in light of the recent Netflix phenomenon, Heartstopper, which has captured the hearts and minds of people throughout the world. So thank you very much, and I will answer any questions you may have a little later on. Thank you.